my pleasure to present the 2025 Canadian Hillman Prize for exceptional local reporting to Drew Anderson of the Narwhal. "We will not lie" is the phrase Drew fished out of a venerable river of black ink. It would eventually become the headline of one of his many stories, exposing how the government of Daniel Smith, and Daniel Smith herself, heaven forbid, told a lie about why they had declared a moratorium on new renewable energy projects in Alberta. In August 2023, the new government shocked the energy industry by announcing a temporary halt on all renewable projects. This, they said, was done at the behest of the two independent agencies that run and regulate the grid. It was a huge decision. At the time, Alberta was a powerhouse of renewables. The Pembina Institute estimated it would affect planned projects worth $33 billion. This is not a sort of quick decision one makes, one assumes. Other media duly reported the decision and its implications. Drew went fishing in the dark whirlpools of Alberta's Freedom of Information system. His early requests arrived in the standard livery of that system, dressed in black from head to toe, almost every word obscured. And that was why the judging panel decided he deserved the Hillman accolade, because confronted with obscurantism, he persevered over many months to reel in the true story. And we commend the Narwhal for allowing him the time to do that. He widened his net. He put in hundreds of FOI requests, salvaged words, panned for dates, and fingered through flotsam, for a series of stories reinforced with official emails, phone texts from key players, briefing notes from the agency's top brass, and much more. The government and the Premier insisted they were only doing what was asked of them. The Premier, Daniel Smith, told the media, "The Alberta Electric System Operator asked us to do the pause." That's a quote. Drew's harvest revealed the opposite was true. It was the government that wanted to pause the projects, and the agencies were dismayed at the prospect. In fact, it was the minister who suggested the pause, and he did so at his very first meeting with the chair of the operator. How do we know this? Because Drew Anderson has the email from the chairman reporting on that meeting. The next week, the minister raised the topic again with the chairman. How do we know that? You guessed it. Only this time it's a text message, which states, "The topic of a pause on new applications came up again." And Anderson has emails from the agency's CEO to his staff in which he states he is not comfortable with the government plans, declaring them very troubling. Drew further revealed that the government was putting pressure on the agencies to get in line with its fiction. We know that because floating in an obscure eddy of a little explored bureaucratic stream, a Microsoft Team chat from one of the agencies, and it said, "We will not lie." This abbreviated quote from the article pretty well tells the whole story. I quote, "As the controversy built, a senior staffer with the Alberta Electric System Operator noted the minister had requested the organisation to help beef up the province's communication strategy, to say that the decision to impose a moratorium was made after multiple meetings, a request that would bring them in line with government talking points." One of my favourite phrases. The same staffer said the request has also been made to the Alberta Utilities Commission, which regulates the system. And then comes the key quote from the staffer. Their position, as is ours, is we will not lie. Well, it won't surprise you to know that staffers that won't lie and journalists who won't give up are among our favourite people at the Hillmans. So it's my pleasure to invite Drew Anderson to come up and duly acknowledge his terrific and tenacious work.
This prize would mean a lot to me in any circumstance, but it's especially meaningful to me now for these particular stories and in this particular time and place. The three stories in particular at issue tonight were the culmination of what I would describe as a healthy dose of stubbornness and oppositional defiance disorder. When I started filing these information requests, Neil talked about that sort of sea of black ink, but that's only half the story. I was sort of met with a duality of, secrecy from governments, sort of two aspects of their canon, a flood of useless information and plenty of redactions. One of the first batches of documents that I received was 400 pages, and not a lot of redactions. But the vast majority of those 400 pages were emails from Albertans, mostly form emails, about how they were upset about a wind or solar project next to their property. To put it mildly, that was not within the scope of my request. But I'm stubborn, and I have oppositional defiance disorder, so I read all 400 pages, and I found 2 or 3 lines in those 400 pages that first broke this story open, and I wrote my first piece. I also had dates to target and hints about more, and I filed more requests, faced those oceans of black ink, but they couldn't catch all the breadcrumbs. Throughout it all, I waited for a series of requests submitted to the province's arm's length grid operator, the sort of central node that conducts our private system, born from my increasingly precise understanding of what had happened and what the government actually did. And I waited. There was patience. Deadlines passed, but there was something that told me to take a breath. It didn't feel like a brush off. And when those documents were released, a whole new world opened. Barely any redactions, hundreds of pages. Not only did they contradict the government, they showed the government tried to force the grid operator to tell the same tall tales. These were the basis for the 3 stories that brought me to the stage tonight. If I had been in a newsroom, I would have whooped out loud and heads would have turned and we probably would have gossiped about it. As it turns out, I work from home in my PJs. So I whooped out loud anyway and added it to the list of things that my downstairs neighbors probably wonder about. That solitary whoop was sort of fitting, though, for this story that was born of a single-minded document hunt in a wasteland of sources. No one was talking in Alberta, and it's common. No one wants to step out of line. And that's a critical piece of why this award and these stories means so much to me at this point in time. Not only did it crack through the kind of wall I'm accustomed to in my home province, but at this moment, the Alberta government is set to introduce legislation that would make this kind of reporting almost impossible, rewriting its freedom of information laws to further restrict information like that which formed the backbone of these stories. The changes will legalize the blatant distortion of Alberta's current freedom of information laws practiced by Danielle Smith's government and try to ensure no other arm's length agencies step out of line. We'll all be poorer for it or more determined to find those breadcrumbs. This award only serves to strengthen my resolve, and I thank you for it.